The Great Assembly Hall of the Galactic Concord was the largest structure ever built by living beings. It floated in the empty space between three ancient star systems, and its walls were made of crystal that had been grown over 10,000 years. Representatives from 400 species sat in rising circles around a central platform, and today every seat was filled. Ambassador Lisa Morgan stood alone on that platform. She was a small woman with gray hair and tired eyes, but her voice was steady as she spoke. Behind her, a holographic display showed images that made many of the assembled aliens look away in disgust. "These are the colony worlds of Haven, New Promise, and Brightwater," Lisa said. 6 months ago, they were home to 2 million human beings. Families, children, people who wanted nothing more than to build new lives among the stars. She touched a control, and the images changed. Now they showed burned cities, bodies in the streets, ships descending from the sky with weapons firing. The Critian Empire decided that our colonies were built on space they wanted. They gave no warning. They offered no negotiation. They simply came and killed everyone they found. A murmur ran through the assembly. Lisa waited for it to fade before she continued. "We have brought evidence. We have brought witnesses. We've brought the recorded communications of Critian commanders laughing as they ordered the destruction of civilian shelters." Her voice cracked slightly, but she forced herself to go on. "We come before this Concord to demand justice." For a long moment, silence hung over the assembly hall. Then a sound broke it. Laughter. High Sovereign Valithos rose from his seat at the highest point of the chamber. He was Critian, which meant he stood 3 meters tall with skin like polished bronze and eyes that glowed with inner fire. His people had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years, and every being in the room knew it. "Justice," Valithos repeated, still chuckling. "The humans demand justice." He spread his forearms wide and looked around at the other representatives. How amusing. How very, very amusing. More laughter came from the Critian section of the assembly. Some other species joined in, either because they found it funny or because they were too afraid of the Critians to stay silent. Lisa did not move. She did not react. She simply waited. "Little human," Valithos said, looking down at her with something between pity and contempt. "Your species has been part of this galaxy for what? 50 of your years? You are children, infants. You settled on worlds that belonged to our empire long before your ancestors crawled out of the mud. Those worlds were classified as unclaimed in Concord records." Lisa replied calmly, "Records can be wrong. Borders can change. The strong take what they need, and the weak accept what they are given." Valithos sat back down his throne-like chair. "This is the way of things. This is how the galaxy has worked since before your species existed. If you cannot protect your colonies, perhaps you should not have colonies." Admiral Daniel Carter watched from the human delegation's small section of seats. His hands were clenched so tight that his knuckles had turned white. Beside him, his aide put a hand on his arm in warning. "Not yet," the aide whispered. "Let her finish." On the platform, Lisa Morgan took a slow breath. When she spoke again, her voice carried to every corner of the vast chamber. "High Sovereign, I have one final statement to make on behalf of the United Earth Government and all human beings everywhere." Valithos waved a hand dismissively. "Speak then. We grow bored. Earth demands that the Critian Empire cease all aggressive actions against human territories immediately. We demand full withdrawal from our colony worlds within 30 standard days. We demand reparations for the families of those who were murdered." Lisa paused. "If these demands are not met, humanity will respond with force. And you will not enjoy what comes next." The laughter this time was louder. It echoed off the crystal walls and seemed to fill the entire universe. Valithos actually wiped tears of amusement from his glowing eyes. "Respond with force," he repeated. "You? Against us?" He gestured at the holographic display, which now showed the Critian Grand Fleet. 10,000 warships, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. We have crushed empires that spanned 1,000 worlds. We have ended species that dared to stand against us. And you, with your tiny fleet of primitive vessels, threaten us? Lisa did not blink. "I am giving you fair warning. This is more than you gave our people on Haven, New Promise, and Brightwater. Warning?" Valithos leaned forward, his amusement fading into something colder. "Let me give you a warning, little human. When your 30 days have passed, we will come to your Earth. We will show you what happens to species that forget their place. And when we are finished, humans will be nothing but a memory. A joke that older races tell their children." He smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "How does that warning sound?" Lisa looked at him for a long moment. Then she did something that confused everyone watching. She smiled back. "It sounds," she said quietly, "exactly like what I expected you to say." She turned and walked off the platform without another word. The Critian delegation laughed and jeered as she passed. Other species watched in uncomfortable silence. The session was declared closed, and representatives began to file out of the Great Hall. Counselor Dren of the Vethani Collective caught up with Lisa in the corridor outside. He was a tall, thin being with silver skin and large dark eyes that held something like concern. "Ambassador Morgan," he said softly, "I hope you know what you are doing. The Critians do not make empty threats. They will destroy your world." Lisa stopped and looked up at him. The smile was gone from her face now, replaced by something hard and cold. "Counselor, do you know what the Critians' greatest weakness is?" Dren shook his head. "They have been at peace for 12,000 years. They have never fought an enemy who was not already beaten before the war began. They have never faced a species that was willing to sacrifice everything for justice." Lisa started walking again. "They laughed at us today. I want you to remember that. Remember how they laughed." "Why?" Dren asked. Lisa did not turn around. "Because in 30 days, no one in this galaxy will ever laugh at humanity again." In the human delegation's ship, Admiral Daniel Carter stood before a star map that showed Critian space in red and human space in blue. The blue was so small compared to the red. So very small that his communications officer approached. "Sir, Ambassador Morgan has returned," she says to begin. Daniel nodded slowly. He reached out and touched the map, right at the heart of Critian territory. "Send the signal to Earth," he said. "Tell them the countdown has started. And tell Project Nightfall to prepare for activation." "Yes, sir." The officer hesitated. "Sir, do you really think we can win?" Daniel looked at the vast red expanse of Critian space. 12,000 years of power, 10,000 warships, countless worlds and endless resources. "They think we are weak because we are small," he said. "They think we are harmless because we have been patient. They have no idea what we have been building, what we have been planning." He turned to face his officer. "They laughed at us, and that laughter is going to cost them everything." The ship turned toward Earth, carrying with it the beginning of a war that would change the galaxy forever. Deep beneath the mountains of Colorado, in a facility that did not exist on any map, Dr. Amanda Price stood before a device that looked like a small sun trapped in a cage of metal and light. The glow from it painted her face in colors that had no names, and the air around it hummed with power that made her teeth ache. "Project Nightfall," she said to the military officers assembled behind her. 40 years of work. 40 years of pretending to be weaker than we are. And now it is ready. General Marcus Cole stepped forward. He was an old man with scars on his face, and hands that told stories of battles fought long ago. Explain it simply, Doctor. For those of us who do not understand physics. Amanda nodded. She had practiced this explanation many times. Every species in the galaxy uses the same basic technology for faster-than-light travel. They bend space around their ships and slip through the folds. The Critians perfected this technology thousands of years ago, and everyone else copied them. We know this, Cole said impatiently. What they do not know is that this technology has a weakness. A big one. Amanda touched a control, and a holographic display appeared showing waves of energy spreading through space. When a star dies, it releases a specific type of radiation. This radiation disrupts the folds in space that ships use to travel. Normally, this radiation fades quickly, but we learned how to create it artificially, and we learned how to make it last. The officers exchanged looks. Admiral Daniel Carter, who had just returned from the Galactic Concorde, leaned forward with interest. You are saying we can stop their ships from using faster-than-light travel? He asked. Not just stop them. We can make entire regions of space impossible to navigate. Their ships will drop out of hyperspace wherever we want them to. They will be lost, confused, and scattered. Amanda smiled. And that is only the beginning. We have also developed stealth technology that they cannot detect. Weapons that can cut through their shields. Communication systems they cannot jam. Cole frowned. How? The Critians have technology thousands of years ahead of ours. They have old technology, Amanda corrected. Technology they perfected long ago and never improved because they never needed to. They stopped innovating because no one challenged them. We, on the other hand, have spent 50 years studying everything they have, finding every weakness and building counters to everything they rely on. She turned back to the glowing device. They think they know what humans are capable of. They are wrong. The meeting continued for hours. Plans were discussed. Strategies were debated. By the end, every officer in the room understood what was about to happen. Humanity was not going to fight the war the Critians expected. They were going to fight a war the Critians could not even imagine. 3 weeks into the 30-day deadline, Captain Nathan Brooks stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance. It was a ship unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Its hull was coated in materials that absorbed sensor signals. Its engines ran silent. It could pass within 1,000 kilometers of a Critian station and never be detected. And it was not alone. All ships report ready, Captain, said Lieutenant Katie Wells from her station. The fleet is in position throughout Critian space. Nathan looked at the tactical display. 47 small blue dots scattered across the vast red territory of the Critian Empire. Each dot was a ship like his own. Each ship carried weapons that could cripple space stations and destroy military bases. And the Critians had no idea they were there. How did we get so many ships into their territory without being seen? Asked a young ensign who had just joined the crew. Nathan smiled slightly. We have been moving ships into position for years. Slowly, carefully, one at a time. The Critians never looked for us because they never believed we could be a threat. Their arrogance made them blind. The ensign shook his head in wonder. All this time, we were preparing for war, and they never knew. That was the plan. Nathan turned to face his crew. Listen carefully. In 7 days, the deadline will expire. The Critians will send their grand fleet to destroy Earth. They expect an easy victory. They expect to find us helpless and afraid. His voice hardened. They are going to find something very different. Across the galaxy, in the Galactic Concorde station, Counselor Dren could not sleep. He kept thinking about Ambassador Lisa Morgan and the strange smile she had worn when High Sovereign. Valithos threatened to destroy humanity. He decided to contact her. The communication took several minutes to connect across the vast distances of space, but eventually, Lisa's face appeared on his screen. "Counselor," she said calmly, "this is unexpected. Ambassador, I must warn you. I have learned that the Critians plan to launch their attack the moment the deadline passes. They will not wait. They will not negotiate. They intend to make an example of Earth so terrible that no species will ever challenge them again." Lisa nodded slowly. "I appreciate the warning, Counselor. Truly. You do not seem concerned. Should I be?" Dren stared at her. "The largest fleet ever assembled is about to descend upon your homeworld. You have perhaps 200 ships to defend it. The math is not complicated, Ambassador. You cannot win." Lisa was quiet for a moment. Then she leaned closer to the screen, and Dren saw something in her eyes that made him feel cold. "Counselor, let me tell you something about humans. We come from a world that tried to kill us every day for millions of years. Ice ages, plagues, natural disasters. We survived all of it. Not because we were the strongest or the fastest, but because we never stopped fighting. We never stopped adapting. We never stopped finding new ways to overcome impossible odds. The Critians are not a natural disaster. They are the most powerful empire in galactic history. They are an obstacle," Lisa said simply. "And humans have been overcoming obstacles since we learned to walk upright. The Critians think they know what war looks like. They have fought enemies who played by the rules, who met them in open battle, who surrendered when the outcome was clear." She shook her head. "We are not going to do any of those things. We are going to fight in ways they have never seen. We are going to strike where they do not expect. We are going to make them understand that you do not provoke humanity unless you are prepared to pay the price." Dren wanted to argue. He wanted to tell her that courage was not enough, that determination could not overcome 10,000 warships. But something in her voice stopped him. "What are you planning?" he asked quietly. Lisa smiled that strange smile again. "Watch the Critian core systems in 7 days, Counselor. Watch carefully. And remember that we gave them a chance to make peace." The communication ended. Dren sat alone in his quarters, staring at the blank screen. He had lived for 300 years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had watched species destroy themselves in foolish wars, but he had never seen anything like the look in Lisa Morgan's eyes. It was not fear. It was not desperation. It was certainty. Absolute, unwavering certainty. For the first time, Dren began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, the Critians had made a terrible mistake. On the 7th day, the Critian Grand Fleet assembled in orbit around their homeworld. 10,000 warships, each one a masterpiece of ancient technology. High Sovereign Valithos himself came to watch them depart. "Go," he commanded. "Destroy the human homeworld. Leave nothing alive. Let the galaxy see what happens to those who threaten the Critian Empire." The fleet entered hyperspace. A wave of destruction aimed at a small blue planet called Earth. They never arrived. Deep in Critian territory, Nathan Brooks received the signal he had been waiting for. "All Nightfall units, this is Defiance. The Critian fleet has entered hyperspace. They have taken the bait." He took a breath. "Execute Phase 1. The war begins now." Across 47 locations, human ships powered up their weapons. And the Critian Empire, which had known nothing but peace for 12,000 years, was about to learn what it meant to face humanity at war. Fleet Commander Thorax had served the Critian Empire for 200 years. He had led fleets against rebellions and crushed resistance movements across 1,000 worlds. He had never known defeat. He had never known fear. These were emotions for lesser species. But when his flagship dropped out of hyperspace, 3 million kilometers from where it should have been, With no other ships in sight, he felt something cold settle in his chest. "Report," he demanded. "Where are we? Where is the rest of the fleet?" His navigation officer worked frantically at his console. His four hands moved in a blur, but his voice trembled when he answered. "Commander, I do not understand. Our calculations were perfect. We should be in orbit around the human homeworld. Instead, we are nowhere. Empty space. No stars, no planets, nothing. Find the other ships, now." It took several minutes to establish communication with the scattered fleet. What Thorax learned made the cold feeling in his chest grow worse. The 10,000 ships of the Grand Fleet had emerged from hyperspace in over 300 different locations. Some were millions of kilometers apart. Some had appeared inside asteroid fields. At least 50 ships had been destroyed when they materialized too close to each other. How is this possible? Thorax demanded. Hyperspace navigation has been perfected for thousands of years. This cannot happen. But it had happened. And as his officers worked to regroup the scattered fleet, Thorax began to receive reports of something else. Something worse. "Commander, we are detecting energy signatures in Critian space. Multiple signatures. They appeared to be human ships." Thorax stared at the tactical display. Blue dots were appearing throughout Critian territory. Not near the border. Not in disputed systems. Deep inside the Empire itself. Near shipyards. Near communication stations. Near military bases. "That is impossible," he said. "We would have detected them. Our sensors cover every part of our space. Commander, the signatures are confirmed. Human ships. They are attacking." At the Velthran shipyard, the largest construction facility in the Critian Empire, workers looked up in confusion as alarms began to sound. The shipyard had never been attacked. It was thousands of light years from any potential enemy. It was protected by defense platforms and patrol fleets. None of that mattered when 3 human ships appeared out of nowhere and began firing weapons that cut through shields like they were not there. In 10 minutes, the shipyard was a field of burning debris. The human ships vanished before the patrol fleet could respond. The same scene played out across Critian space. Communication relays went dark. Military stations stopped transmitting. Supply depots exploded. And everywhere, the humans struck and disappeared before anyone could fight back. Admiral Venya had warned High Sovereign Valithos about underestimating the humans. She had studied their history. She had read about their wars against each other, their constant innovation, their refusal to accept defeat. But Valithos had laughed at her concerns, just as he had laughed at the human ambassador. Now Venya stood on the bridge of her battleship, watching reports flood in from across the Empire. And she felt no satisfaction in being right. "They are not trying to hold territory," she said to her officers. "They are not trying to conquer systems. They are striking at our ability to fight back. Our communications, our shipyards, our supply lines." She shook her head slowly. "This is not how war is supposed to work. What do we do, Admiral?" Venya looked at the tactical display. Red icons representing Critian assets were blinking out one by one. Blue icons representing human ships appeared, struck, and vanished. It was like fighting ghosts. "Contact Fleet Commander Thorax. Tell him to forget Earth. Tell him to bring the Grand Fleet back to defend the Empire." She paused. "And contact the homeworld? Tell High Sovereign Valithos that we are at war. Real war. For the first time in 12,000 years. On the bridge of the USS Defiance, Captain Nathan Brooks watched as another Critian station disappeared from the tactical display. "Target destroyed," Lieutenant Katie Wells reported. "No casualties on our side. The Critians never even saw us coming." Nathan nodded. but there was no joy in his expression. This is only the beginning. The Critians will adapt. They will find ways to counter our stealth technology. They will learn to track our ships. But by then, we will have crippled their infrastructure, Katie said. They will not be able to coordinate their forces. They will not be able to build new ships. They will not be able to communicate across their empire. Exactly. Nathan turned to his communication officer. Send a message to Admiral Carter. Phase 1 is complete. We have their attention. Now we move to Phase 2. The message traveled across the stars to Earth, where Admiral Daniel Carter received it with grim satisfaction. The first stage of the plan had worked perfectly. The Critian Grand Fleet was scattered and confused. The Critian Empire was under attack from within, and humanity had not lost a single ship. But Carter knew this was only the opening move. The Critians were ancient and powerful. They would not fall easily. They would regroup. They would adapt. They would strike back with all their fury. And that was exactly what humanity needed them to do. On the Critian homeworld, High Sovereign Valithos received the reports in his throne room. His advisors cowered before him as he read about the attacks. The destroyed shipyards. The silenced communication relays. The scattered Grand Fleet. Humans, he growled. Primitive, worthless humans. They dare to attack us? They dare to strike at the heart of our empire? Sovereign, one advisor said carefully. Perhaps we should consider negotiation. The humans have demonstrated capabilities we did not expect. If we could reach a settlement, silence. Valithos rose from his throne. I will not negotiate with vermin. I will not bow to creatures who were playing with rocks while we were building empires. His eyes glowed brighter with rage. Send orders to every fleet in the empire. I want every ship hunting these human attackers. I want them found and destroyed. And I want their precious earth reduced to ash. Sovereign, our forces are scattered. Our communications are damaged. It will take time to then do it faster. Valithos turned away from his advisors. The humans think they have won some great victory. They have merely angered us, and they will learn what it means to face the wrath of the Critian Empire. But as the days passed, the wrath of the Critian Empire proved difficult to deliver. Every time their ships gathered to strike at human forces, the humans knew about it. Every trap they set was avoided. Every ambush was turned against them. The humans seemed to know where the Critians were at all times. They appeared out of empty space, struck with devastating precision, and vanished before anyone could respond. Critian commanders began to report that their soldiers were afraid. For the first time in living memory, Critian warriors hesitated before entering battle. 3 weeks into the war, Thorax finally managed to bring his grand fleet back together. 7,000 ships remained from the original 10,000. Some had been destroyed by the hyperspace disruption. Others had been picked off by human raiders while they drifted alone in empty space. We have the numbers, Thorax told his officers. We still have the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. We will find the human homeworld, and we will destroy it. But when the fleet tried to enter hyperspace, they found that they could not. The disruption fields had spread. Entire regions of space were now impassable. The Grand Fleet was trapped. Thorax stood on his bridge and stared at the tactical display. The blue dots of human ships surrounded his fleet like wolves circling wounded prey. They did not attack. They simply watched, waited. A communication request appeared. Human origin. Against his better judgment, Thorax accepted it. Admiral Daniel Carter's face appeared on the screen. He looked calm, patient, almost sad. Fleet Commander Thorax, Carter said. Your fleet is surrounded. Your empire is burning. Your communications are destroyed. You cannot run. You cannot call for help. He paused. This is your one chance to surrender. Take it. Thorax laughed, but even he could hear how hollow it sounded. Surrender? To you? The Critian Empire does not surrender. We will fight to the last ship. Carter nodded slowly. I expected you to say that, and I want you to know that I respect your courage. But courage is not enough. Not anymore. His expression hardened. You laughed at us. You killed millions of our people. You thought we were nothing. Now you know the truth. And if you will not surrender, then you will watch everything you built burn. The communication ended. Thorax looked at his officers. He saw fear in their eyes. Fear that he shared, though he would never admit it. All ships, he ordered. Prepare for battle. We will show these humans that the Critian Empire does not fall easily. But as the first human ships began their attack, moving faster and striking harder than anything the Critians had ever faced, Thorax began to wonder if maybe the Empire was already falling, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. 6 weeks into the war, the Critian Empire had lost more ships than in the previous 1,000 years combined. Their grand fleet had been reduced to half its original size. Their economy was collapsing as trade routes became too dangerous to travel. Their communication networks were in ruins, leaving commanders unable to coordinate with each other. And the humans just kept coming. Captain Nathan Brooks led his ship through the debris field that had once been a Critian military base. Bodies floated in the vacuum. Wreckage spun slowly in the darkness. It was not a sight that brought him any pleasure. Captain, Lieutenant Katie Wells said quietly, "We are receiving intelligence about a Critian prison facility in the Verthax system. They are holding thousands of human colonists there. Survivors from Haven and New Promise." Nathan turned sharply. Survivors? We thought everyone was killed in the massacres. Apparently, the Critians kept some alive. For labor. For experiments. Katie's voice was tight with controlled anger. For entertainment. Nathan was silent for a long moment. Then he opened a communication channel to his fleet. All ships, change of plans. We are going to Verthax. We are going to get our people back. The prison facility was built into an asteroid, deep underground where sensors could not reach. It was guarded by defense platforms and patrol ships. The Critians considered it completely secure. They were wrong. Nathan's fleet arrived in the system, using the stealth technology that had made them ghosts throughout this war. They disabled the defense platforms with precise strikes. They destroyed the patrol ships before they could call for help. And then Nathan led a team of soldiers into the asteroid itself. The things they found inside would haunt them forever. The Critians had not treated their prisoners well. Thousands of humans were packed into cells designed for hundreds. They were thin, sick, covered in wounds that had never been allowed to heal. Many had died. Their bodies had simply been left where they fell. Nathan found Megan Harris in one of the deepest cells. She had been a teacher on New Promise before the attack. Now she was barely recognizable as human. Her eyes were hollow. Her hands shook constantly. But when she saw Nathan's uniform, when she understood that rescue had finally come, she began to cry. "I did not think anyone would come," she whispered. "I did not think anyone knew we were alive." "We know now," Nathan said gently. "And we are taking you home." The evacuation took hours. Over 4,000 survivors were found in the facility. 4,000 out of the 2 million who had lived on the colony worlds. The others were all dead. As the last survivors were loaded onto human ships, Nathan walked through the empty prison one more time. He found a room that the Critians had used for interrogation. The stains on the walls told him everything he needed to know about what had happened there. Megan Harris found him standing in that room. She had refused medical treatment until she could speak with him. "You need to understand something," she said. Her voice was stronger now. fueled by a cold anger that had kept her alive through months of horror. When the Critians attacked New Promise, they did not just kill people. They made it slow. They made it painful. And they laughed. The whole time, they laughed. Nathan looked at her. I know. No, you do not know. You cannot know unless you were there. Megan stepped closer to him. They thought we were animals. Less than animals. They killed children in front of their parents because they thought it was funny. They recorded everything and sent it back to their homeworld as entertainment. Nathan felt something harden inside him. He'd been fighting this war because it was necessary. Because humanity had been wronged and justice was required. But now, standing in this room, looking into Megan's eyes, he understood it on a deeper level. This was not just about strategy. This was not just about proving humanity's strength. This was about making sure no one ever did this to humans again. They will pay, he said quietly. I promise you, they will pay for everything. The rescue of the prisoners was broadcast across the galaxy. Admiral Daniel Carter made sure that every species in the Galactic Concord saw the footage. The starving survivors. The mass graves. The recordings that the Critians themselves had made of their atrocities. Counselor Dren watched the footage in his quarters on the Galactic Concord station. He had thought he understood the situation. He had thought the Critians were simply being aggressive, simply defending what they saw as their territory. He had not understood the depth of their cruelty. This changes everything, he said to himself. He was not the only one who felt that way. Across the galaxy, species that had lived under Critian rule for thousands of years began to ask questions. If the Critians could do this to humans, what had they done to others? What atrocities had been hidden? What crimes had been forgotten? High Sovereign Valithos saw the broadcast too. He saw the galaxy's reaction. And for the first time, he understood that he was losing more than a war. He was losing the story. The narrative that had kept the Critian Empire in power for 12,000 years. He contacted Ambassador Lisa Morgan directly. It was the first time they had spoken since the Assembly Hall. You have made your point, Valithos said. His voice was tired, defeated. What do you want? Lisa looked at him through the communication screen. She remembered how he had laughed at her, how he had dismissed her warnings, how he had promised to destroy her species. I want you to understand something, she said. You started this war because you thought we were weak. You thought you could kill our people and face no consequences. You thought wrong. I see that now. So let us negotiate. Let us find a way to end this before more blood is spilled. You want to negotiate? Lisa leaned forward. Here are my terms. Full withdrawal from all human space. Complete independence for any species in your empire that requests it. War crimes trials for everyone responsible for the massacres. And full reparations for the families of the dead. Valithos stared at her. Those terms would destroy my empire. Your empire was built on the suffering of others. It deserves to be destroyed. Lisa's voice was cold. But I am giving you a chance to survive. To rebuild something better. That is more than you gave the people of Haven, New Promise, and Brightwater. Valithos was silent for a long moment. Then he shook his head. I cannot accept those terms. My people would never follow a leader who surrendered so completely, then find new people to lead. Lisa ended the communication. The war continued. Human forces struck deeper and deeper into Critian territory. They did not conquer planets or occupy systems. They simply destroyed everything the Critians needed to maintain their empire. Shipyards, factories, military bases, communication centers. And with each strike, more species under Critian rule began to resist. Rebellions broke out on a dozen worlds. Former allies of the Critians quietly withdrew their support. The empire that had stood for 12,000 years was crumbling from within. On the Galactic Concord station, representatives began to speak openly about what had once been unthinkable. A galaxy without Critian dominance. A new order based on equality instead of fear. Councilor Dren addressed the assembly. For too long, we have accepted Critian rule because we were afraid. Afraid of their fleet. Afraid of their power. Afraid of what they might do if we challenged them. He gestured at the tactical displays showing human ships throughout Critian space. The humans have shown us that we do not need to be afraid anymore. They have shown us that even the mightiest empire can fall when it forgets that power comes with responsibility. The assembly voted to formally condemn the Critian massacres. It was a small thing, just words on a document. But it was the first time in 12,000 years that the Galactic Concord had taken any action against the Critian Empire. Everything was changing. And at the center of it all, humanity kept fighting. Not for conquest, not for revenge, but for justice that had been denied too long. In his throne room, High Sovereign Valithos sat alone in the darkness. His advisors had fled. His generals had failed. His empire was dying. A communication request appeared. Human origin. He accepted it. Admiral Daniel Carter's face appeared on the screen. He looked tired but determined. "Valithos," Carter said, "this can end. Today. Right now. All you have to do is accept the terms." Valithos laughed bitterly. "And become the ruler who destroyed everything my ancestors built. The one who surrendered to primitives? You could be the ruler who saved what was left. Who chose peace over pride. Who gave his people a chance to build something better." Carter paused. "Or you could be the ruler who lost everything because he was too proud to admit he was wrong. The choice is yours." Valithos closed his eyes. He thought about the glory of his empire, the power, the certainty. All of it gone now. All of it destroyed by a species he had dismissed as worthless. "Send me the terms," he said quietly. "I will. Consider them." It was not surrender. Not yet, but it was a beginning. 3 months after the war began, the great assembly hall of the Galactic Concord was filled once again. But this time, everything was different. The Critian section, once the highest and most honored seats in the chamber, sat nearly empty. The human delegation, once small and ignored, had been moved to a position of prominence. And on the central platform, where Ambassador Lisa Morgan had once stood alone and been laughed at. High Sovereign Valithos now waited to speak. He looked smaller than before, older. The glow in his eyes dimmed to something. That might have been shame. The chamber fell silent. As he began to speak, "I stand before you today to formally request peace with the United Earth government and all human territories." His voice was flat, empty of the arrogance that had once defined it. "I acknowledge that the Critian Empire committed acts of aggression against human colonies. I acknowledge that these acts resulted in the deaths of innocent beings. And I acknowledge that humanity's response was justified." The words seemed to cause him physical pain, but he continued. "I am prepared to accept the terms presented by Ambassador Morgan. Full withdrawal from human space. Independence for any subject species that requests it. War crimes trials for those responsible for the massacres. And full reparations to the families of the dead." A murmur ran through the assembly. This was unprecedented. In 12,000 years of Critian dominance, no high sovereign had ever surrendered. No terms had ever been imposed upon them. The galaxy was witnessing history. Ambassador Lisa Morgan rose from her seat and walked to the central platform. She stood facing Valithos, and for a long moment, neither of them spoke. 3 months ago, Lisa finally said, "You laughed at me. You laughed at humanity. You told us we were nothing. You promised to destroy our world and wipe our species from existence. She paused. Do you remember what I told you then? Valithos nodded slowly. You said we would learn what happens when we mistake your patience for weakness. And have you learned? The High Sovereign was quiet. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he answered, Yes. Lisa turned to face the assembly. The Galactic Concord is asked to witness and approve the peace terms between humanity and the Critian Empire. All species present will vote. The vote was overwhelming. 400 species. 387 voted in favor. The rest abstained. Not a single vote was cast against. The war was over. In the days that followed, the galaxy began to change. Critian forces withdrew from human space. Subject species that had lived under Critian rule for thousands of years declared their independence. War crimes trials began, and Critian commanders who had participated in the massacres were brought to justice. It was not revenge. It was accountability. There was a difference, and humanity was determined to demonstrate it. Councillor Dren found Lisa Morgan in a quiet observation room overlooking the assembly hall. She was standing at the window, watching ships come and go from the station. Ambassador, Dren said, may I ask you something? Lisa turned to him with a tired smile. Of course, Counselor. Your forces had the advantage. Your technology had proven superior. You could have destroyed the Critian Empire entirely. You could have taken their worlds, claimed their resources, become the new dominant power in the galaxy. Dren paused. Why did you not? Lisa was quiet for a moment. Then she looked back out the window. Because that was never what we wanted. We did not fight this war to become conquerors. We did not want power. We wanted justice for the people who died on Haven, New Promise, and Brightwater. We wanted to make sure it could never happen again. She turned back to Dren. If we had destroyed the Critians, if we had become exactly what they were, then what would have been the point? We would have just replaced one oppressor with another. Dren considered this. Many species would have done exactly that. The chance to rule the galaxy. It would have been impossible to resist. For some, maybe. Lisa shrugged. But humans are not interested in ruling the galaxy. We just want to live in it, peacefully, with dignity, and with the knowledge that our children will be safe. On Earth, the celebrations lasted for days. Humanity had faced the greatest empire in the galaxy and won. They had proven that they were not weak, not primitive, not worthless. They had earned their place among the stars. But Captain Nathan Brooks did not celebrate Dodd instead. He traveled to a memorial that had been built on a hillside overlooking the ocean. It was a simple place, just a wall with names carved into stone. 2 million names. The people who had died on Haven, New Promise, and Brightwater. He found Megan Harris there. She had been released from the hospital after weeks of treatment. She was still thin, still healing, but she was alive. She stood before the wall with tears running down her face. I knew so many of them, she said when Nathan approached. My students, my neighbors, my friends. She touched one of the names gently. I keep thinking about what their lives would have been like. The children they would have had. The things they would have done. Nathan stood beside her in silence. There were no words that could make this better. No victory that could bring back the dead. Does it mean anything? Megan asked finally. The war, the peace, the justice. Does any of it matter? Nathan thought carefully before answering. I do not know if it matters to them. They are gone, and we cannot change that. But it matters to everyone who is still alive. It matters to the next generation of humans who will grow up knowing that the galaxy cannot hurt us without consequences. It matters to every species that was living in fear of the Critians and now has hope. He turned to face her. And it matters to me. Because I looked into your eyes in that prison, and I promised you that they would pay. They paid, not with blood for blood, but with something better, with change, with justice, with the end of everything they built on the suffering of others. Megan wiped her eyes. I wanted them to suffer. For a long time, that was all I wanted. I know. I wanted that too sometimes. Nathan looked back at the wall of names. But suffering does not bring peace. It just creates more suffering. The best thing we can do for the people we lost is build a galaxy where nothing like this can ever happen again. In the Galactic Concord Assembly Hall, a new session was being called to order. For the first time in history, a human representative would sit on the ruling council. Ambassador Lisa Morgan took her seat among the leaders of the most powerful species in the galaxy. She thought about everything that had brought her to this moment. The massacre, the humiliation in this very hall, the war, the countless small decisions that had led humanity from the edge of extinction to this place of honor. When it was her turn to speak, she rose and faced the assembly. 3 months ago, humanity came before this council asking for justice. We were laughed at. We were told that we were weak, that we were nothing, that we should accept our place at the bottom of the galactic order. She paused, letting her words sink in. We did not accept that. We refused to believe that might makes right. We refused to accept that the strong can do whatever they want to the weak. And we proved that even the smallest voice can become thunder when it speaks for justice. She looked around the chamber at the hundreds of species represented there. Today begins a new era for this galaxy, not an era of human dominance. We do not want that, but an era where every species, no matter how small or how new to the stars, is treated with respect. An era where peace is not just the absence of war, but the presence of justice. An era where no one laughs at the suffering of others. Her final words echoed through the great hall. Remember this day, not as the day humanity proved its strength, but as the day the galaxy learned that true power comes from standing up for what is right. We gave fair warning. We were ignored. We were laughed at. And then we changed everything. She smiled slightly. Let that be a lesson to anyone who thinks that cruelty has no consequences. It does. And humanity will always be here to make sure those consequences are delivered. The assembly was silent. Then, slowly, applause began. It spread through the chamber until it filled every corner of the vast hall. Somewhere in the galaxy, a young Critian student asked her teacher about the war. She wanted to know why their empire had fallen, why everything had changed so quickly. The teacher, an old Critian who had lived through the war and seen the truth of what his species had done, thought carefully before answering. Because we forgot something important, he said. We forgot that the smallest voice can become the loudest thunder when it has something worth fighting for. We laughed at the humans because they were small and weak and new. We thought they were nothing. He shook his head slowly. We were wrong. And by the time we understood our mistake, it was already too late. The student thought about this for a long time. Then she asked one more question. Will we ever be great again? The teacher looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, human ships patrolled the trade routes. Human diplomats negotiated with former enemies. Human scientists shared their knowledge with any species that asked. Perhaps, he said, but not by conquest, not by cruelty. If we want to be great again, we must earn it. Through kindness, through cooperation, through proving that we have learned from our mistakes. He turned back to his student. That is what the humans taught us. That is,